This is a story that dates back to September 1998 when Larry and Sergey founded Google based on an algorithm called PageRank, and they had developed it as PhD students at Stanford. Now during that time, the problem with search was that majority of the search engines ranked the pages majorly based on the text that they contained. And because of this, it allowed spammers to game the system by filling their pages with commonly searched keywords. For example, when you searched for Honda, instead of giving you honda.com as a search result, it would show you an adult site that just copy pasted the word Honda 50 times. But PageRank dived much deeper and evaluated the sites by authority and influence based on a number of other relevant websites that got linked to them in the form of backlinks. Now, although Google's algorithm was far superior than most of the algorithms in the market, they struggled to make money. Because unlike today, the standard wisdom back then was that there was no money in search results. Instead, websites like Yahoo used their homepage to place banner ads and generated millions of dollars in profits. This is where Google had the first chance to make $1 million by displaying the same banner ads as Yahoo. But Larry and Sergey hated the idea because it degraded the customer experience. So while other companies were making $1 million, both due to their business model and due to the dot-com bubble, Google was bleeding money and was wandering around without a business model. That is when Larry and Sergey started studying their rival GoTo.com. And back in the day, although it did not have a great search algorithm, it made $68 million in profit in 1999. Why? Because instead of building their own search engine from scratch, Bill Gross, the founder, took an existing search engine called Intomi's engine and introduced a twist called the paid search. Along with that, Bill also introduced a game-changing pricing model called the cost per click pricing model. Now this model was an extremely successful model back in the day because it solved three major problems in the market. Number one, in an attempt to downplay the spammers, companies like Honda were very keen on paying more money for their keywords, such that they could get the top spot and not the spammers. And when they paid for the advertising, it automatically pushed down the spammers. Secondly, these keywords were placed on an auction. Therefore, it created a competition among the advertisers, which generated a ton of profits for the website. And thirdly, while in other search engines, advertisers had to pay for an impression, whereas in GoTo, they only had to pay for the click. As in, instead of paying for the advertisement every time it appeared in front of the users, they needed to pay only when someone clicked on it. Now this was a revolutionary idea back then because it gave the advertisers a confidence of conversion, and the uncertainty of wasted money into marketing was completely eliminated. This is when Larry and Sergey started dissecting into the model of GoTo.com, and when they did, they identified two major problems with the model. The first problem was that because the model was solely based on who pays more money, a large company could abuse its power and buy the keywords of other companies also. For example, Samsung could buy all the keywords related to Vivo, so even if someone is searching for Vivo, a Samsung sponsored content would pop up, and this was unfair to the small businesses. Secondly, the small businesses were discouraged from placing their ads merely due to the price domination of the large players. Therefore, Larry and Sergey worked day in and day out to come out with two major improvements that turned Google into a $1 trillion company. The question is, what exactly were these improvements? Number one, they came out with the idea of something called the quality score that would filter out content in such a way that the ranking will not just be based on the auction bid, but also on the basis of the relevance of the ad with respect to the search. So if you're looking for Honda, Tesla cannot sabotage Honda's place and present itself on top. Secondly, they came out with the idea of using a variant of a unique auction model called the Wickray auction model. This is a model that was actually proposed by a Nobel laureate named William Wickray, and this is how it works out. Let's say there are four bidders, Mahindra, MG, Tata and Toyota, and their respective bids are 10 rupees, 20 rupees, 30 rupees and 10,000 rupees respectively. And they are bidding for a keyword called XUV. Now in the standard model or the first price model, Toyota will win the auction and it has to pay 10,000 rupees. Now although Toyota could have got it for 31 rupees, it has to overpay because of its assumption that the keyword XUV will be costly. Whereas in the second price model or the Wickray model, Although Toyota still wins the auction, it only has to pay 1 rupee more than the second highest bidder, which in this case is Tata. So Toyota only has to pay 31 rupees. And in case of Google, Toyota has to pay the price quoted by Tata, that is the second highest bidder. Tata has to pay what was quoted by MG, that is the third highest bidder, and so on and so forth. This way, advertisers don't have to overpay for the keyword, and they also get insights into the competitive prices in the market, which in turn helps them optimize the future bids. Along with this, using the quality score, Google ensured that they don't just rank the ads based on the bids, but also on the basis of the quality of the content that the bidders are putting forward, such that the sponsor with the most relevant content always shows up on top, even if they've paid less money. And these two features, ladies and gentlemen, turned Google into a revolutionary search engine that was far superior than the rest of the competition. Because it did not just have the amazing feature of cost per click of GoTo.com, but also saved advertisers a ton of money due to the second price auction method. And most importantly, due to the quality score, in spite of being the highest bidder, a company could not overpower another bidder solely on the basis of money. And this eventually encouraged authentic advertisements and eliminated the abusers and spammers. This is how, ladies and gentlemen, in 2002, Google launched its pay-per-click, auction-based search advertising product called the Google AdWords Select. And from that year onwards, the revenue of the company started skyrocketing. They made $400 million in revenue in 2002, $1.5 billion in 2003, $3.2 billion in 2004, and finally, when they went IPO in 2004, the company reached a valuation of $23 billion. And the rest is history. Now, another important question that needs to be asked over here is that during such times of ruthless competition, when they had a predator like Microsoft and a giant like Yahoo as their competition, what was so special about Google that they were able to keep innovating to stay ahead of these well-established companies? And this is what brings me to another important attribute of Google as a company, and that is their culture of innovation. Did you guys know that some of the most game-changing projects at Google, like Gmail, Google Suggest, and even Google News, they were all just side projects, and none of them were officially allocated to any team in the company. In fact, all of them were designed by enthusiastic employees who just happened to do something extraordinary that their manager never asked them for. The question is, how and why were these employees working so hard on something that the company is not even asking for? Well, that is because of a wonderful company practice called the 20% rule. And because of this rule, every employee had to dedicate 20% of their time into projects that interest them, even if they've not been officially allocated by the company. And this was based on the philosophy that even if it leads to 1,000 failed projects, even if one of them turns out to be successful, it is enough to make up for the 1,000 failures. And this is exactly what happened, because today Gmail alone is being used by 1.8 billion users, and it is set to generate $1 billion in profits for the company. Therefore, because of such wonderful practices, not just Sergey and Larry, but the entire organization was not just a bunch of workers, but a bunch of learners who kept learning and trying new things every single day. And this